Before the first sparrow marks the horizon, you feel the familiar tremor of uncertainty about all that waits to be spoken today. Have careless words ever torn at trust, or silence left you misunderstood? In this hush between night and sunrise, the earth pauses. Dawn's pale ribbon stretching across the sky like a promise. Here, heaven invites you to trade the clamor for stillness. You celebrate God as your unfailing refuge of wisdom, the one whose counsel never falters. This moment exists so you may unclench the plans in your hands, surrender each conversation ahead, and tune your heart for the whisper that guides. Ask James 1:5. When you ask, the giver of wisdom answers freely, flooding your mind with clarity and grace. Its generosity is never grudging, its timing never late. What concern presses hardest? An anxious meeting, a fragile relationship, a longing you fear to voice. Will you entrust that burden now, asking for light on your tongue and healing in each word? Now, as your heart grows still, we step into the quiet dawn where wisdom begins. You stand at the threshold of day, like a watcher on a hill, clouds still tinted lavender. The city not yet stirring. Cool air rests on your cheeks, carrying the scent of jasmine, and every heartbeat seems to echo the slow drawing of light across the horizon. The hush is fragile, even the breeze tiptoes through banyan leaves, honoring the sanctuary of these early minutes. In such solitude you sense eternity leaning close, as though the Creator stretches his hand over the landscape and whispers, "Child, breathe." You obey, inhaling the crispness, exhaling the restless plans that try to colonize your dreams. Each breath becomes a humble yes to guidance you cannot engineer. With eyelids lowered, you begin to trace yesterday's conversations. Perhaps a hurried remark bruised someone's spirit, or a neglected greeting left affection unsaid. Words, once released, felt like feathers blown from a cliff, irretrievable. Yet now you refuse to carry their echo into dawn. You allow silence to wash those memories the way tides polish broken shells. You acknowledge them, not to wallow in guilt, but to present them like shards at the carpenter's feet. Here regret dissolves into resolve today. Speech will rise from a deeper well. See Psalm 5:3. At sunrise, you lay your requests before the Lord, and you wait in expectation. Anticipation is itself a prayer, an act of trusting what unseen hands are shaping. Standing within that verse, you feel the steadiness of divine rhythm, petition followed by patience. No need to rush, the sun climbs at its ordained pace, and so will your understanding. You let the verse guide your breathing, request, release, inhale, exhale, speak, pause. This cadence becomes a quiet liturgy, aligning heartbeat to heaven's metronome. In the growing amber, you picture the day like an unopened scroll. You pray for insight to read the hidden lines, moments of laughter, friction, choice. Before they unfold, you ask for guards at the gateway of lips, so that reaction bows to reflection. You imagine every sentence marinated in kindness, every question sprinkled with attentiveness, every answer coated in humility. These are not fantasies, they are seeds planted in morning soil. The Spirit waters them with promise, and already you hear the faint rustle of first shoots. Peace settles on shoulders, neither heavy nor soft, but perfectly fitted like priestly linen. You step forward, heart listening, mind luminous, spirit ready for the wisdom that rides on dawn's quiet wings. You pause on the veranda, noticing how dew beads catch first fire of sunrise, each droplet a tiny prism declaring that the smallest thing can reflect glory when turned toward light. So it is with syllables, they seem small, yet angled rightly they refract heaven into weary rooms. You resolve that today your greeting to the barista, your note to a colleague, even the apology you have delayed will be such prisms. When uncertainty threatens to reassert its chill, you will remember this stillness. Replay the breath prayer and let patience slow your pulse until wisdom answers. The hush you cultivate now is not escape. It is formation, crafting within you a soul spacious enough to host holy guidance all day long. You slip from veranda to prayer chair, feeling woven cane warm beneath you, the hush of dawn now threaded with sparrow chatter and the faint hum of distant engines. Breath settles, and you notice how easily thoughts stampede. Unfinished emails, someone's curt remark, the news anchors late, night worry. Rather than pushing them away, you invite awareness to hold them like shells to the ear you listen. You name, you set each on an inner shelf, clearing space for a voice gentler than your own. In this still chamber of mind, distractions lose their urgency, like children quieting under a kindly teacher's gaze. Tranquil focus sharpens your spiritual senses, turning the tiny rustle of a fig leaf into a summons to pay attention. Borders between ordinary and sacred thin as you lift eyes to sycamore branches waving a slow benediction. Early rays flicker through foliage, sketching moving mosaics on the floor, and their silent artistry reminds you that God communicates in nuance more often than in thunder. You pray that your inner ear grow as keen as a musician tuning a violin, alert to the slightest shift in pitch. A Proverbs 2:22, incline ears toward understanding, Scripture urges, because wisdom rarely shouts, it prefers the steady cadence of surrender. An attentive spirit becomes fertile soil where timely counsel can sprout before any word leaves your lips. Turning that verse into breath, you inhale, hunklein, expand ribs with understanding, and exhale, wisdom, until body and soul sink to its rhythm. A fountain burbles nearby, each droplet cascading like syllables from an unseen stream, persuading you that heaven's guidance is constant, even when unperceived. You envision sacred water running over intentions, smoothing rough motives, revealing motives beneath motives, some noble, some craving applause. You do not chastise, instead, you bring them to the light, asking spirit to refine desire until purity gleams. This refining is not a scolding fire, it is the loving warmth of dawn coaxing dew to evaporate, leaving leaf and flower refreshed. Far off, a bicycle bell rings, and you perceive it as a subtle invitation today. Alertness rides ahead of speech. You imagine pausing 2 beats before each sentence, long enough for conscience to nod approval. If tension arises, you will picture this quiet place, returning mentally to cane chair and fig leaves, letting calm dictate the tone you choose. Inner attentiveness becomes portable sanctuary, folded like a handwritten psalm inside your pocket. What longing flickers within as you listen? Healing a rift with a sibling, courage for a presentation, patience with a child. Name it softly, letting its edges soften under divine regard. Then inquire, which person crosses your mind unbidden? Perhaps the colleague whose sarcasm hides fatigue, or the cashier who rarely receives a genuine greeting. Hold that face in prayer for 10 measured breaths, sensing compassion settle like balm. This dual focus, your own need and another's, aligns you with love's two great commands, rooting future speech in empathy rather than reaction. You conclude this watchful interlude convinced that perception precedes proclamation. Wisdom has begun to seep into marrow, promising to surface precisely when conversation turns delicate. You rise, stretching limbs with quiet gratitude, ready to walk into corridors and cafes carrying an open, vigilant spirit. Attuned awareness is today's first gift. Words will be its faithful servants. You turn from chair to window as the sun finally clears the tree line. Amber rays slipping through glass like cords of liquid gold that braid themselves around your fingers. Palms open, you welcome what cannot be grasped. Illumination that arrives without trumpet, yet reshapes outlook with quiet power. Insight settles first, a sensation warmth on skin, easing tension woven through shoulders, then as awareness, a widening sense that today is larger than deadlines. In this radiance you perceive counsel riding the light, gentle yet unmistakable, urging you to read the world differently, to notice nuance before noise. A dove alights on the rooftop opposite, its soft coo mingling with city stir, and you recognize a pattern heaven speaks through humble symbols. The bird's posture, alert, unhurried, mirrors the stance you now adopt within. Steady yet receptive, you breathe slowly, picturing words you will soon speak, moving no faster than that dove's measured heartbeat. As James 3:17, from above comes wisdom pure, peace, loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. This layered description becomes your checklist, a lattice on which every future sentence must climb before leaving your mouth. You rehearse the qualities, letting each ring through memory, the way wind chimes test their tuning. Pure, peaceable, gentle, approachable, abundant in mercy, fruitful, unbiased, authentic. Clarity deepens as you imagine today's first interaction, a coworker seeking direction on a stalled project. Instead of rehearsing clever solutions, you visualize asking an unexpected question, one that draws hidden concerns to the surface. The scene unfolds in your mind. You listen longer than usual. You pause until their uncertainty spills into the open. Then you respond with a phrase refined by the Spirit's forge, rather than by ego's appetite. Discernment feels less like lightning strike and more like dawn slowly brightening a valley, revealing pathways previously obscured. You recall the ancient king who asked for an understanding heart above riches, and you realize his request was not a one-time event but a daily posture. Hands extended, agenda surrendered, perspective anchored in reverence. You echo that posture now, dedicating tongue and temperament alike to higher counsel. If later you feel conversation tightening into conflict, you plan to inhale the checklist again, letting its cadence interrupt impulse. A market vendor calls out below, rasping humor into morning air, and you smile at the reminder that insight is meant for streets as much as sanctuaries. The wisdom you receive is not fragile crystal to hide behind glass. It is seasoned bread to break with strangers and friends. You promise that every insight gained in quiet will express itself in kindness, shouted across traffic, in patience offered at the checkout, in laughter shared when plans fall apart. Finally, you envision a thread of light tracing ahead of you like a guiding filament, weaving through corridors, meetings, messages, and meals. You resolve to follow its shimmer, trusting that when words threaten to outpace love, that filament will tug, slow, redirect. With soul attuned, you whisper gratitude for counsel already given and guidance still unspoken. Both belong to you because dawn's giver delights to adorn lips with grace. You pad into the kitchen where kettle steam curls like morning incense, reminding you that vapor vanishes with the slightest gust. So do rash sentences. You linger over the hush that lingers after the whistle, savoring how restraint tastes a quiet sweetness on the palate of the soul. The rising aroma of tea becomes parable, leaves steep in patient stillness before sharing flavor, and you realize speech, too, must rest in contemplation before it pours. Breeze wafts through an open window, carrying the scent of lemongrass and distant traffic, and you sense a subtle challenge riding that current. Will you let outer motion dictate inner haste, or will you govern your tongue the way dawn governs light? Gradual, disciplined, sure. Our Psalm 141 Sin 3, set a guard over your mouth, asked the psalmist, placing sentry at lips' gate. The verse paints vigilance not as suspicion, but as devotion, honoring every syllable as a potential seed of life or thorn of sorrow. You envision an angelic watchman standing where thought meets voice, tipping spear whenever reaction tries to slip past unchecked. This holy sentinel invites you to breathe twice before reacting once, to allow wisdom purchased in quiet dawn to examine each impulse. You rehearse the pause, inhale to gather calm, evaluate motive, exhale anything born of pride. Tea cools, and you cradle the mug, noticing warmth seeping into palms the way grace seeps into temperament. A memory surfaces. Yesterday's tense conference call, when sarcasm edged your tone. You replay it without condemnation, viewing it as an instructor rather than accuser. The watchman could have stayed your comment if he had been stationed there. Today he is. You decide that whenever pulse quickens, you will feel the mug's heat in imagination, letting its steady comfort remind you that slow is powerful. Step outside, and neighborhood life accelerates. Children shouting, motorcycles revving, vendors bargaining in spirited cadence. The cacophony is symphony if conducted by charity, without it, discord. You picture yourself as oboist in this civic orchestra, entering only on cue, sustaining pitch that guides others toward harmony. If someone snaps with impatience, you will answer with gentleness that surprises. Should gossip drift like invasive vine, you will trim it by changing topic to honor absent colleagues. Every guarded response becomes liturgy in motion, converting street corner into sanctuary. Mid-morning, sunlight glints off a fountain's surface, each sparkle lasting a heartbeat, illustrating how even brief words can flash hope into weary minds. You resolve that compliments will be specific, naming diligence, celebrating growth, so they land as nourishment, not fluff. Critique will be wrapped in empathy, offered privately after prayer. Digital messages will undergo the same scrutiny as spoken phrases. The send button will serve as litmus test of peace. You trust the sentinel and the spirit to flag even emojis if they carry hidden bite. While finishing tea, you whisper thanks that restraint is not muteness, but measured melody. Guarded speech frees creativity, because energy once wasted on apology now fuels blessing. You pledge to close evening by recalling each moment the sentinel intervened, Turning would be conflict into collaboration. Gratitude will polish that record until vigilance becomes delight rather than duty. With tongue kept, you step forward confident that today's silence in the right places will make room for tomorrow's songs of joy. You step onto the sidewalk, day now fully awake, and greet a neighbor whose wary eyes reveal battles unspoken. Rather than the routine morning, you pause, angle your body toward them, and let compassion shape your tone. You mention the lavender scent drifting from their garden. You affirm the steadiness with which they walk their aging dog. A subtle lift brightens their face. You realize kindness requires neither sermon nor fortune, only presence genuinely offered. Each phrase you choose feels like salve on chapped hands, restoring dignity where fatigue had settled. A city bus hisses to a halt beside you, doors exhaling passengers into hurried currents. You overhear snippets, complaints about traffic, anxiety over exams, laughter hiding apprehension, and sense a delicate ecosystem of hearts brushing past. You pray silently that your speech become portable medicine, administered through brief exchanges, a gentle thank you for your patience. To the driver, a sincere "you've got this." To the student flipping flashcards, a bright "I appreciate your work." To the street sweeper, these sentences may vanish from memory, yet like invisible vitamins, they strengthen unseen places. Ephesians 4:2-9, let no corrupt word escape your lips, but only what builds others according to their need, generously gifting grace. This mandate frames each interaction as opportunity to construct, not to erode, to supply strength exactly where weakness trembles. You rehearse the verse under breath as you walk, treating it like carpenters' square aligning boards. Whenever sarcasm flickers, the square straightens you. When gossip tempts, the square reminds you whose reputation you guard. You arrive at work to find an email thread inflamed by misunderstanding. Instead of reacting defensively, you breathe twice, reread motives beneath sentences, and craft a response that first acknowledges frustration, then offers clarity, concluding with invitation to discuss further over coffee. Moments later, a colleague messages gratitude, confessing they typed their initial reply while upset. You glimpse how restrained language can reroute conflict into collaboration, as surely as riverbanks redirect floodwaters into irrigation. Lunch hour unfolds beneath a banyan's generous canopy. A friend unpacks grief over family illness, words stumbling under weight of fear. You resist fixing, resist platitudes. You listen until tears ease. Then speak softly, you name their courage. You remind them they are not alone. You promise prayer. The breeze rustles branches overhead, and you feel heaven nod approval as solace seeps into their sigh. Healing speech, you discover, is more about attentive silence than eloquent counsel. Empathy is the richest vocabulary. Throughout afternoon tasks, you cultivate micro blessings, a note of thanks on a coworker's desk, a 7-word affirmation typed beneath a teammate's draft, a voice memo birthday greeting sent to a mentor. Each deposit builds a quiet treasury of goodwill, interest compounding in unseen hearts. By day's end, you sense a gentle warmth trailing behind you, as though the atmosphere absorbs every gracious syllable and radiates it back to the world. You whisper a closing prayer that any word you missed or mangled be redeemed by the one who once spoke galaxies into being, and still specializes in turning broken sounds into symphonies of hope. You cross the threshold of workday bustle as sun climbs to full brilliance, every pane of glass along the boulevard flaring like polished shields. Traffic pulses, neon signs blink awake, and yet you carry an interior radiance stronger than any billboard. Wisdom gathered at dawn now kindles your stride. Each footfall feels intentional, as though pavement itself aligns to the measured beat of purpose. You recognize faces previously overlooked, courier balancing parcels, teacher shepherding students, parent coaxing toddler past reluctance. In their varied expressions, you glimpse countless prayers for direction, and you silently bless them, knowing your words may soon answer one of those whispered appeals. Light splinters through a skyline of reflective towers, scattering miniature rainbows on the sidewalk at your feet. They remind you that illumination is not hoarded but refracted. It journeys outward in countless hues, coloring corners of the city you may never visit. You resolve to become a living prism, letting understanding, gathered in quiet, split into encouragement tailored for every soul you meet. Where debate sparks, you infuse clarity. Where fatigue droops shoulders, you offer humor. Where grief fogs vision, you extend patient presence. You no longer strive to dominate conversations. You aim to brighten them, trusting that even a single sentence saturated with insight can redirect an entire afternoon. Psalm 199:105. Your word is a lamp for my feet, a light on my path. The verse frames navigation as companionship. Illumination travels beside you, not ahead in unreachable distance. Its gentle glow is sufficient for the next faithful step, inviting continual reliance rather than occasional consultation. Midday heat rises, and with it the temptation to hurry, to clip replies, to treat dialogue as transaction. You pause at an open window, let warm air brush skin, and recall the lamp verse. You picture golden lanterns suspended over every future conversation, their steady beams urging patience. This imagery cools your pulse. You return to your task slower, steadier, committed to let no urgency eclipse empathy. Even emails adopt cadence. Salutation, substance, blessing. Each line an intentional strand in a tapestry of goodwill. Late afternoon finds you mentoring a junior colleague, guiding them through a knot of data mismatches. Instead of dictating corrections, you invite discovery, asking questions that coax their own insight. Their eyes widen as understanding dawns, and you watch illumination leap from your lamp to theirs, two flames now dancing in tandem. You sense heaven's smile. Wisdom multiplied is heaven's favorite arithmetic. When sunset edges the sky in copper, you retrace steps homeward. Heart luminous, lips tasting gratitude. Streetlights flicker on, yet your inner glow needs no substitute. It has endured boardrooms, lunch counters, phone calls, and laughter. You whisper a final prayer that every word spoken today, bold or brief, continue shining in memory, guiding those who heard toward peace long after night descends. Breathe deeply and remember dawn's hush, the sentinel at your lips, and the steady lamp guiding each response. Invite gratitude to flood every corner of thought for guarded silences that diffused tension, for phrases that lifted hidden sorrow, for wisdom that flowed precisely where need arose. Offer each moment back to God as fragrant incense. Failures for mercy, successes for praise. Resolve that tomorrow's tongue will rise again from stillness, ready to illuminate fresh paths. Rest now in the quiet certainty that divine counsel never sleeps.